Maya stared at the email on her cracked phone screen for the third time that morning. The rent was due in 5 days, and her bank account had exactly $243 in it. She'd been teaching piano to kids in their homes for the past 3 years, barely scraping by in a city that seemed determined to crush anyone without a trust fund or a corporate job. The email was from Premier Tutoring Services, one of those fancy agencies that connected wealthy families with private teachers. She'd submitted her profile months ago and honestly forgotten about it. But now they had a client, a very particular client who needed a piano teacher for his 8-year-old son. The pay rate made her blink twice. $300 per session, 3 sessions a week, guaranteed for 6 months. That couldn't be right. She refreshed the email. The numbers stayed the same. Maya had never made more than $50 an hour in her life, and that was on a good day with a generous family. This had to be some kind of mistake, or worse, one of those scams her mother always warned her about. But the agency was legitimate. She'd checked their website thoroughly before applying. They worked with celebrities, politicians, old money families who lived in penthouses she'd only seen in magazines. She called the number listed in the email, half expecting a robot voice or a dial tone. Instead, a crisp professional voice answered immediately. "Ms. Chen, thank you for calling back so promptly," the woman said. "I assume you're interested in the position?" Yes, but I need to ask about the rate." "Is that a typo?" "No typo. Mr. Hartwell is very particular about his son's education and willing to pay for quality instruction. However, I should mention that he's quite demanding. We've had 2 previous tutors who didn't work out." Maya's stomach tightened. "What happened with them?" "Let's just say Mr. Hartwell has high expectations and little patience for excuses. If you're interested, he'd like to meet you tomorrow at 4 o'clock at his office. The address is in downtown, the Hartwell Tower." Maya knew that building. Everyone in the city knew it. 60 stories of steel and glass that dominated the skyline, headquarters of Hartwell Industries. Whatever they made, it was making someone incredibly rich. She agreed to the meeting before her logical brain could list all the reasons this was probably a terrible idea. The next afternoon, Maya stood in front of her closet trying to look professional, with a wardrobe that consisted mostly of jeans and comfortable shoes, for walking between student appointments. She settled on her only pair of dress pants and a simple black sweater that didn't have any stains or holes. Her reflection in the mirror looked nervous. She tried to fix her face into something more confident, but her eyes gave her away. The lobby of Hartwell Tower was exactly as intimidating as she'd imagined. Marble floors, security guards in suits, and a reception desk that looked like it cost more than her car. The elevator ride to the 58th floor made her ears pop. When the doors opened, she stepped into a reception area that was all windows and modern art she didn't understand. Ms. Chen, a young assistant, appeared, looking polished and efficient. "Mr. Hartwell is ready for you. Follow me, please." The office they entered was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city, making Maya feel like she was floating above everything. Behind a massive desk sat a man who couldn't have been much older than 40, though his expression made him seem ancient. He had dark hair starting to show gray at the temples, sharp features and eyes that looked right through her like she was transparent. "Sit," he said without preamble or greeting. It wasn't rude exactly, just completely devoid of warmth. Maya sat in the leather chair across from him, trying not to think about how much furniture cost in a place like this. Alexander Hartwell looked at a file in front of him, presumably her resume and background check. "You've been teaching for 3 years. No formal credentials from a conservatory, but you have a bachelor's in music education. Your references are adequate. The word stung a little, but Maya kept her face neutral. "I need someone to teach my son piano. He's 8 years old. He's had minimal exposure to music, and I want him to develop the skill properly. I don't tolerate inconsistency or excuses. If you commit to this position, I expect you to be present and prepared for every session. Is that clear?" "Yes, of course," Maya said, finding her voice. "Can you tell me a bit about your son? Does he have any interest in music, or is this something you want him to learn?" Something flickered across Alexander's face, too quick to read. "He needs structure and discipline. Music will provide that. He's a quiet child, well-behaved. You shouldn't have any problems with him." The way he said it made Maya uneasy, but she couldn't pinpoint why. There was something too formal in how he spoke about his own son, like describing a stranger's child rather than his own. "When would you like me to start?" she asked. Tomorrow, 4 o'clock. My assistant will provide you with the address to my home. The sessions will be there, in the music room. He closed the file and looked at her directly for the first time. Miss Chen, I'll be frank. You're the third tutor I've hired. The first was too familiar, trying to become friends rather than teach. The second was incompetent despite her impressive credentials. I'm hoping you'll be different. Maya met his gaze, something in her refusing to be intimidated by his coldness. I care about my students, Mr. Hartwell. I believe children learn best when they feel supported and encouraged, not just disciplined. If that's too familiar for you, then maybe I'm not the right fit. She couldn't believe the words coming out of her mouth. She needed this job desperately. But something about the way he talked about his son made her protective instincts kick in. For the first time, Alexander's expression shifted. Not quite a smile, but perhaps a hint of respect. We'll see how tomorrow goes. If my son responds to your methods, we'll continue. If not, I'll pay you for the session and we'll part ways. The meeting was clearly over. Maya left the office with her heart pounding, unsure if she'd just landed the opportunity of a lifetime or made a huge mistake. The next day, she arrived at an address in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. The building's doorman checked her name on a list before allowing her into an elevator that required a key card to access the penthouse. When the doors opened directly into the apartment, Maya tried not to gape at the space. It was beautiful in a cold, museum-like way, everything perfectly placed, nothing out of order, no signs of a child living there at all. You must be the piano teacher. A woman in her 50s appeared, dressed in a gray uniform. I'm Mrs. Lin, the house manager. Ethan is waiting in the music room. Third door on the left. Maya followed the directions, her footsteps silent on the thick carpet. She found the music room easily. Inside was a beautiful grand piano, music stands, and sitting on the bench with perfect posture was a small boy with dark hair and enormous brown eyes that looked too serious for someone so young. Hi, Maya said softly, entering the room. I'm Maya, you must be Ethan. The boy nodded but didn't speak. He watched her carefully, like he was trying to figure out if she was safe or dangerous. Maya set down her bag and sat beside him on the bench, leaving plenty of space between them. Have you ever played piano before? No, Ethan said quietly. It was barely a whisper. Well, that's okay. Everyone starts somewhere. Can I tell you a secret? She leaned in slightly and Ethan's eyes widened with curiosity. When I first started playing, I was terrible. I hit all the wrong keys and it sounded like a cat walking across the piano. But you know what? That's part of learning. Making mistakes is how we figure out what sounds good. For the first time, something like relief crossed Ethan's face. Maya smiled and gently showed him where to place his hands on the keys. What she didn't notice was Alexander standing in the hallway just outside the door, listening to every word, his expression unreadable as he watched his son begin to smile for the first time in weeks. 3 weeks had passed since Maya started teaching Ethan, and every session revealed a little more about the quiet boy who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his small shoulders. He was improving quickly, his fingers finding the keys with increasing confidence, but it was the moments between the music that told Maya something was deeply wrong in this beautiful empty apartment. Ethan never ran, never raised his voice, never left anything out of place. He was 8 years old, but he moved through the world like someone much older, someone who had learned that taking up space was dangerous. On Tuesday afternoon, Maya arrived to find Ethan already at the piano, sitting with perfect posture, hands folded in his lap. Mrs. Lin let her in as usual, disappearing quickly to some other part of the massive apartment. Alexander was away on business, which seemed to happen often. In 3 weeks, Maya had only seen him twice after that first meeting. Hey, buddy, Maya said, setting her bag down. How was school today? Ethan shrugged, a small movement of his shoulders. It was fine, just fine. Nothing exciting happened? We had art class. I drew a picture of a bird. Maya sat beside him on the bench. I love birds. What kind? I don't know. Just a bird. He looked down at the piano keys. Can we start the lesson now? There it was again. That need to stay on task, to do everything right. Maya had seen it in every session. If Ethan made a mistake while playing, his whole body would tense up. His eyes would dart to the door like he was waiting for someone to come in and tell him he'd failed. Actually, Maya said, making a decision, I thought today we could do something different. Have you ever heard of improvisation? Ethan shook his head, his eyes curious but cautious. It means making up music as you go. There's no right or wrong way to do it. You just play whatever feels good to you. She demonstrated, letting her fingers dance across the keys in a simple, playful melody. See? I'm just having fun with it. Want to try? Ethan looked uncertain. But what if it sounds bad? Then it sounds bad and we laugh about it and try something else. Music isn't about being perfect, Ethan. It's about expressing what's inside you. She moved her hands away from the keys. Go ahead. Play anything you want. His small fingers reached out tentatively, pressing a single key. Then another. The notes were random at first, disconnected. But slowly something emerged. A melody that was sad and sweet at the same time, like something lost that wanted to be found. Maya watched his face transform as he played, the careful mask slipping away to reveal a child who was feeling something deeply. When he finished, there were tears on his cheeks. He wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. I'm sorry, he whispered. I don't know why I'm crying. Maya's heart broke a little. Don't be sorry. That was beautiful, Ethan, really beautiful. You just told me something with that music, something important. What did I tell you? She chose her words carefully. That you're carrying something heavy, and that you're stronger than you think you are. Ethan looked at her with those two old eyes, and for a moment, Maya thought he might open up, might tell her what was making him so sad. But then his face closed off again, and he straightened his posture. Can we practice the scales now? Father likes to hear them when he gets home. Father, not dad or daddy. Always father, spoken like a title rather than a relationship. Over the next few lessons, Maya tried different approaches to reach Ethan. She brought in music from movies he might like, taught him simple songs that made him smile, and always ended each session with a few minutes of improvisation. Slowly, he began to relax around her. He started asking questions about her life, about other students she taught, about whether she had a family. I live with my roommate, Dana, Maya told him one day. She's a teacher too, but she teaches second grade. And I have a cat named Dizzy who thinks he owns the apartment. Why is he named Dizzy? Because when he was a kitten, he would spin in circles chasing his tail until he fell over. He was the silliest thing I'd ever seen. Ethan laughed, a real laugh that transformed his whole face. It was the first time Maya had heard that sound from him, and it was magic. I wish I had a pet, he said quietly. But Father says they're too much responsibility and they make messes. Maybe when you're older, Maya offered, though the words felt hollow. Something told her Alexander wasn't the type to change his mind. It was during the 5th week that things shifted. Maya arrived early and heard voices coming from Alexander's study. The door was slightly open, and though she knew she shouldn't eavesdrop, something made her pause in the hallway. I'm telling you, Alexander, he needs more than just tutors and structured activities. It was a woman's voice, older, firm. He needs friends his own age. He needs to play and be messy and act like a child. He has everything he needs. Alexander's voice was cold, final. This conversation is over, Patricia. You can't keep him in this bubble forever. You're pushing him away, can't you see that? I'm protecting him. That's what matters. Protecting him from what? From living? There was a long silence. Maya held her breath, pressed against the wall. You don't understand, Alexander said finally, and his voice was different now, cracked around the edges. You can't understand. Maya heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly moved down the hallway, pretending she'd just arrived. An elegant woman in her 60s emerged from the study, her face tight with frustration. She glanced at Maya, nodded politely, and left through the front door. Alexander appeared moments later, his face a careful mask once again. Ms. Chen, you're early. Traffic was better than expected. I hope I'm not intruding, not at all. Ethan is in his room. He'll be out shortly. He started to walk away, then stopped. How is he doing? With the piano? He's doing wonderfully. He has a real gift for it. Alexander nodded, but he didn't look happy about the news. If anything, he looked pained. Good. That's good. He disappeared into his study, and Maya was left standing in the hallway, more confused than ever. That afternoon's lesson went well until the very end. They were working on a duet, playing together, and Ethan was laughing at the funny faces Maya made when she intentionally played wrong notes. They were both so focused on the music that neither of them heard Alexander come in. That was beautiful, sweetie, Maya said, using the endearment without thinking. You're getting so good at this. Really? Ethan beamed up at her. You think so? I know so. You've been working so hard and it shows. I'm really proud of you. Ethan's smile was bright and genuine, and in his excitement he threw his arms around Maya in a quick hug. Thanks, Mom, he said. The word hung in the air like a crystal about to shatter. Ethan's eyes went wide with horror as he realized what he'd said. He pulled away from Maya so fast he nearly fell off the bench. I'm sorry, he gasped. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. Maya reached for him instinctively. Ethan, it's okay, sweetheart. It was just a mistake. But Ethan wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her at the doorway. Maya turned slowly, her stomach dropping. Alexander stood there frozen. His face had gone completely white and his hands were clenched at his sides. For a moment nobody moved. The air in the room felt thick and suffocating. Ethan, go to your room, Alexander said quietly. Father, I didn't mean, now. Ethan scrambled off the bench and ran from the room, leaving Maya alone with Alexander. The silence stretched out, painful and tense. Maya didn't know what to say, didn't understand why a simple mistake had caused such a reaction. Alexander walked to the window, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I think that's enough for today, Ms. Chen. Mr. Hartwell, please, he was just excited. Kids make mistakes like that all the time. It doesn't mean anything, doesn't it? He turned to face her, and Maya was shocked to see his eyes were red, like he was fighting back tears. But his face was angry, defensive. You're dismissed for today. Mrs. Lin will show you out. But Ethan, we'll be fine. Please leave. Maya gathered her things with shaking hands, her mind racing. As Mrs. Lin walked her to the elevator, the house manager gave her a sympathetic look. Don't take it personally, dear, she said softly. There are things you don't know, things that make all of this very complicated. The elevator doors closed and Maya rode down 68 floors with her heart pounding, replaying the scene over and over. The look on Alexander's face hadn't just been anger. It had been grief, raw and terrible. And Ethan's reaction, that immediate terror, like he'd committed some unforgivable sin. Maya sat in her car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, trying to make sense of what had just happened. One thing was clear, though. There was something broken in that beautiful apartment, something that went far deeper than a cold father and a quiet son. And somehow, without meaning to, she just stumbled right into the middle of it. Maya didn't sleep that night. She kept seeing Ethan's terrified face, hearing the way he'd apologized like he'd done something terrible, and Alexander's expression, that mix of pain and anger that didn't make any sense for such a small, innocent mistake. By morning, she'd convinced herself she was overthinking everything. Kids said the wrong names all the time. Teachers got called Mom in classrooms every day. It wasn't a big deal, except it clearly was. At least in that house. She spent the next 2 days waiting for a call or email telling her not to come back. But when Thursday arrived, her regular lesson day, there was no cancellation message. At 3:30, she stood outside the building again, her finger hovering over the intercom button. She almost turned around 3 times. But she thought of Ethan, that little boy who was just starting to laugh and play and be a kid. She couldn't abandon him over something she didn't understand. The doorman recognized her now and waved her through. Mrs. Lin answered the elevator with her usual professional smile. But Maya caught something different in her eyes. Sympathy, maybe, or warning. Mr. Hartwell would like to see you in his study before the lesson, Mrs. Lin said quietly. Ethan is waiting in the music room. Maya's stomach tightened. This was it. She was being let go. She followed Mrs. Lin down the hallway to the study, a room she'd never been inside before. It was dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a desk that looked like it had been passed down through generations. Alexander stood by the window, still wearing his suit from work. His tie loosened like he'd been pulling at it. Sit down, Ms. Chen, he said without turning around. Maya sat in one of the leather chairs, her hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. I owe you an apology for Tuesday, Alexander began, his voice carefully controlled. My reaction was inappropriate and unprofessional. You've done nothing wrong, and Ethan has responded well to your teaching. Thank you, Maya said carefully. I'm glad to hear that. However, he turned to face her, and Maya was struck by how exhausted he looked. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his jaw was tight with tension. I think we need to establish some boundaries. Ethan can become attached easily. And it's important that he understands your role here is temporary and professional. Something about the way he said it made Maya's chest tighten with frustration. Mr. Hartwell, with respect, I don't think showing care for a student is crossing a boundary. Ethan is a sweet kid who responds to encouragement and warmth. That's not me overstepping. That's just good teaching. You don't understand the situation. Then help me understand. The words came out before Maya could stop them, because from where I'm sitting I see a lonely little boy who's desperate for connection, and a father who seems terrified to give it to him. Alexander's face went hard. You're overstepping now. Maybe, but somebody needs to say it. Maya stood up, surprised by her own courage. That child is special. He's talented and kind and trying so hard to be perfect for you. And he's miserable, Mr. Hartwell, can't you see that? For a long moment, Alexander just stared at her. Maya prepared herself to be fired, to be thrown out. Instead, something in his face crumbled. He sank into his desk chair and put his head in his hands. You think I don't know that? His voice was raw, broken. You think I don't see it every single day? Maya stood frozen, unsure what to do. Alexander looked up at her and his eyes were red-rimmed. I need a drink for this conversation. Do you drink, Miss Chen? Sometimes. He pulled out a bottle of expensive scotch from a cabinet and poured 2 glasses with shaking hands. He pushed one across the desk toward her and downed his own in one swallow before pouring another. What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this room, he said. Not because I'm ashamed, but because Ethan doesn't know all of it yet. And he can't know. Not until he's older. Maya picked up her glass but didn't drink. Okay. Alexander took a breath like he was preparing to jump off a cliff. Ethan is not my biological son. The words hung in the air. Maya felt her mind trying to process them, rearrange everything she thought she knew. 3 years ago, my wife Claire died in a car accident. Alexander continued, his voice flat, emotionless. The only way he could get through it, Maya realized. She was driving home from a friend's house. A drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly. I'm so sorry, Maya whispered. Ethan was 5. He'd already lost so much. His mother was everything to him. Alexander's hand tightened around his glass. While I was settling Claire's affairs, going through her things, I found letters, emails, evidence of an affair that had been going on for years. Maya's breath caught. I was angry, devastated, betrayed. But Ethan was grieving and he needed me, so I pushed it aside. I focused on being there for him, on keeping our life as normal as possible. He paused, taking another drink, but the questions wouldn't stop. The doubts. So I did a DNA test, just to know, just to have an answer, and Maya asked, though she already knew. And Ethan isn't mine. Biologically, I mean. I'd raised him since birth, changed his diapers, taught him to walk, stayed up with him when he was sick. But genetically, he belongs to someone else. The room felt too small suddenly. Maya tried to imagine what that must have felt like, to lose your wife and discover that betrayal all at once while trying to care for a grieving child. Does Ethan know? She asked. No, he thinks I'm his father. He calls me father because that's what Claire taught him. She came from an old-fashioned family, but he doesn't know the truth. Alexander's voice cracked, and I don't know how to tell him. Or if I should tell him. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked why I reacted the way I did on Tuesday. When Ethan called you Mom, he looked at her directly. Every day I look at him and I see her betrayal. I see the lie I've been living, and then I hate myself for it because he's just a child, an innocent child who lost his mother and doesn't understand why his father can't seem to love him properly anymore. But you do love him, Maya said softly. I don't know. The admission seemed to physically pain him. I don't know if what I feel is love or obligation or guilt. I don't know if I'm capable of loving someone who's a constant reminder of the worst moment of my life. That's grief talking, Mr. Hartwell. Not truth, is it? He laughed bitterly. I've been looking at boarding schools, places where he could go, where he'd be taken care of, where he wouldn't have to live with a father who can barely look at him. You can't do that. Maya's voice was sharp. You cannot send that child away. It would destroy him. And keeping him here isn't destroying him? You said it yourself. He's miserable. He's miserable because he can feel your distance. Children aren't stupid, Mr. Hartwell. They know when they're not wanted. But that can change. You can change. Alexander shook his head. It's more complicated than that. The man who is Ethan's biological father. Claire's affair partner. He recently found out about Ethan. He's threatening to file for custody. Maya felt the air leave her lungs. What? His name is Vincent Torres. He's a businessman, wealthy, connected. Claire never told him about Ethan. She listed me as the father on the birth certificate. But Vincent did his own investigation after Claire died. He knows now. Alexander's hands were shaking again. I was in the process of formally adopting Ethan, making everything legal since we never did it when Claire was alive. But now Vincent is challenging it. He says he has a right to his biological son, but he's never even met Ethan. Doesn't matter. Biology counts for a lot in court. And the fact that I'm not related to him, that I haven't finalized the adoption, that makes my claim weaker. He looked at Maya with desperate eyes. Do you understand now? If I let myself love him, truly love him, and then I lose him to Vincent, how do I survive that? Maya set down her glass and leaned forward. So your solution is to not love him at all? To keep him at arm's length so it won't hurt as much if he's taken away? When you say it like that, it sounds cruel. Because it is cruel. Not to you. To him. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. Ethan didn't ask for any of this. He didn't ask to lose his mother. He didn't ask for complicated biology. And he definitely didn't ask for a father who's so scared of losing him that he's already abandoned him emotionally. I'm trying to protect him. No. You're trying to protect yourself. She reached across the desk, stopping just short of touching his hand. Mr. Hartwell, Alexander, I can't imagine how painful this has been for you. The betrayal, the loss, the fear. But Ethan is 8 years old and he needs you. Not the DNA version of you, just you. The man who's been there his whole life. Alexander's face crumpled, and for the first time Maya saw him cry. Not dramatic sobs, but quiet tears that rolled down his face as years of pain and anger and grief finally found a release. I don't know how, he whispered. I don't know how to get past this. One day at a time. One moment at a time. And maybe you start by going to that music room right now and listening to your son play the piano. Really listening. Not thinking about DNA or courts or betrayal. Just listening to this kid who's trying so hard to make you proud. Alexander wiped his face with his hands, taking shaky breaths. The custody hearing is in 6 weeks. Vincent's lawyers are good. Very good. Then we have 6 weeks to show the court that you're Ethan's real father in every way that matters. And to show Ethan that he's loved. Truly loved. Why do you care so much? Alexander asked. You're just his piano teacher. Maya smiled sadly. Because somebody has to. And maybe because I see something in Ethan that I recognize. That need to be perfect, to be good enough, to earn love that should be freely given. She stood up. Now I have a lesson to teach, and you have some thinking to do. She left him there in his study, surrounded by his expensive things and his expensive scotch, and his overwhelming pain, and she walked down the hall to the music room, where Ethan sat waiting with perfect posture and hopeful eyes. And she decided that no matter what happened with courts or custody or complicated biology, she was going to fight for this kid, because that's what you did when you saw a child who needed someone to fight for them. You showed up. And you didn't give up. The next 2 weeks felt like walking through a minefield. Maya continued her lessons with Ethan, watching as Alexander really tried to be more present. He started coming home earlier. He'd sit in the doorway during lessons, listening. Sometimes he'd even smile when Ethan played something particularly well. But there was a tension in the house that everyone could feel. Mrs. Lynn moved through the rooms more quietly than usual. Ethan's moments of happiness were followed by periods where he'd withdraw into himself, like he was waiting for something bad to happen. Maya found out why on a Tuesday afternoon when she arrived for their regular lesson. Alexander's lawyer was there, a sharp-looking woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She was packing up her briefcase when Maya walked in. Ms. Chen, Alexander said, his voice tight. This is Rebecca Holland, my attorney. We were just discussing the custody case. Rebecca shook Maya's hand firmly. Alexander has told me about the progress Ethan's made with you. That's going to be important for the hearing. The hearing? Maya looked between them. It's been moved up, Alexander said. 3 weeks from now. Vincent's lawyers pushed for an earlier date and the judge agreed. Maya felt her stomach drop. 3 weeks. That was barely any time at all. I should go, Rebecca said, giving Alexander a meaningful look. Remember what we discussed. Document everything. Every moment you spend with Ethan, Every activity, every sign that you're an active, engaged parent. The judge needs to see that you're not just a guardian on paper. After she left, Alexander sank onto the couch looking defeated. He's never even met Ethan. Vincent Torres has never been to a school play, never helped with homework, never stayed up all night when he had the flu. But because he contributed DNA, he thinks he has a right to take him away. Maya sat down beside him. What does Vincent want? Does he actually want to raise Ethan, or is this about something else? I don't know. Rebecca thinks it might be about control or guilt. Or maybe he genuinely believes he can offer Ethan a better life. He's remarried, has a stable home, 2 other children from his new wife's previous marriage. On paper, he looks like the perfect father figure. But he's not Ethan's father. You are. Alexander looked at her with tired eyes. Try telling that to a judge who's looking at biology and legal documents. The music room felt different that day. Ethan was distracted, making mistakes he normally wouldn't make. Finally, Maya stopped the lesson and turned to him. What's going on, buddy? You're not yourself today. Ethan's fingers rested on the keys, not playing. There was a man at school today. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of man? He was talking to my teacher. Mrs. Lynn picked me up instead of the usual driver, and she seemed upset. When I asked her what was wrong, she said nothing. But I know something's wrong. Everyone's acting weird. Maya's heart ached. Kids always knew when the adults around them were worried, even when everyone tried to hide it. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated things to deal with. Maya said carefully, but that doesn't mean you did anything wrong. You know that, right? Ethan nodded, but he didn't look convinced. Is father sending me away? The question hit Maya like a physical blow. What? No, why would you think that? I heard him on the phone. He was talking about schools, and he's been acting strange. Sometimes he looks at me like he's sad, and I don't know what I did. Ethan's voice cracked. I try really hard to be good. I do my homework and I practice piano and I don't make messes, but it's never enough. Maya pulled him into a hug before she could think about professional boundaries or Alexander's warnings about attachment. Oh, sweetheart. Listen to me. You are enough. You are more than enough. Your father loves you. He's just dealing with some difficult things right now, but none of it is your fault. Then why doesn't he act like he loves me? Ethan pulled back, tears streaming down his face. My friend Tyler's dad picks him up from school and plays catch with him and tells him he's proud of him. My father barely looks at me. Maya didn't know what to say. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that his father is paralyzed by fear and grief? That love sometimes gets tangled up with pain until people don't know how to show it anymore. Your father is trying, Maya said finally. I know it doesn't feel like enough, but he's trying. And sometimes that's all we can ask people to do. That night, Maya did something she probably shouldn't have done. She called Alexander's cell phone. He answered on the 3rd ring, sounding surprised. Miss Chen, is everything all right? No, Maya said bluntly. Ethan knows something's wrong. He thinks you're sending him away. He thinks you don't love him. There was a long silence on the other end. Alexander, are you there? I'm here. His voice was rough. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be what he needs. Start by telling him the truth. Age-appropriate truth, but truth. He deserves to know what's happening. Rebecca said not to tell him about the custody case. She said it would traumatize him. You know what's traumatizing? Feeling like you're about to lose everything and not knowing why. Kids are tougher than we give them credit for. Another long pause. Then, will you be there when I tell him? Maya hadn't expected that. You want me there? He trusts you. And honestly, I don't trust myself not to mess this up. 2 days later, Maya arrived at the apartment to find Alexander and Ethan sitting in the living room. Ethan looked confused and scared, his small body tense on the edge of the couch. Alexander looked like he might be sick. Maya sat down in a chair across from them, offering Ethan an encouraging smile. Ethan, Alexander began, his voice unsteady. I need to talk to you about something important. Something I should have explained a long time ago. Ethan's eyes went wide. Am I in trouble? No, you're not in trouble. You've never been in trouble. Alexander took a shaky breath. Do you remember your mom? A little bit. She had pretty hair, and she smelled like flowers. And she sang to me. She did. She loved you very much. Alexander's hands were clasped so tightly his knuckles were white. Before your mom died, she knew someone. A man named Vincent. They were friends. Maya could see Alexander struggling with how much to say, how much an 8-year-old could handle. Vincent is your biological father. Alexander continued. That means he helped make you when you were born. But I'm the one who's been your dad your whole life. I'm the one who raised you and took care of you and loved you. Ethan's face scrunched up in confusion. I don't understand. Are you my dad or not? I am your dad in every way that matters. But Vincent wants to meet you. And there's going to be a meeting with a judge who has to decide where you should live. The room went very quiet. Ethan's breathing got faster, and Maya recognized the signs of a panic attack starting. Ethan, look at me, she said gently. He turned his tear-filled eyes to her. Remember the breathing exercises we do before you perform? Let's do that now. In through your nose, out through your mouth. They breathed together until Ethan's panic subsided a little. Then he looked at Alexander with devastated eyes. You're going to let them take me away. No, Alexander said fiercely, and for the first time, Maya heard real emotion in his voice when he talked about Ethan. No, I'm not. I'm going to fight with everything I have to keep you with me, because you're my son. Biology doesn't change that. But what if the judge says I have to go? Alexander moved from his chair to kneel in front of Ethan, taking his small hands. Then I'll appeal, and I'll keep fighting, and I'll make sure you know that I love you no matter what happens. You love me? Ethan whispered like he couldn't believe the words. I love you, Alexander repeated and his voice broke. I'm sorry I haven't shown it well. I'm sorry I've been distant and cold. I was scared and I was hurting, and I took it out on you when you were the one person who didn't deserve it. Ethan threw himself into Alexander's arms, sobbing. And Alexander held him, really held him, for what Maya suspected was the first time in years. She quietly stood up to leave, to give them privacy, but Alexander's voice stopped her. Stay, please. So Maya stayed, bearing witness to something she suspected neither of them had done in a long time. They grieved together. They talked. Ethan asked questions, and Alexander answered as honestly as he could. The sun set outside the windows, and Mrs. Lynn brought them hot chocolate, her eyes glistening with tears. When Ethan finally fell asleep on the couch, exhausted from emotion, Alexander carefully carried him to his room. Maya was gathering her things when he came back. Thank you, he said simply. You did that yourself. No, I wouldn't have without you pushing me. He looked at her seriously. The hearing is in 2.5 weeks. Rebecca wants to call you as a witness. She wants you to testify about Ethan's progress, about what you've observed in this house. Of course, Maya said immediately. I'll tell them exactly what I've seen, which is a man who's trying his best to be a good father, a man who's learning to love through his fear, and a boy who deserves to stay with the only dad he's ever known. Alexander's eyes filled with tears again. What if it's not enough? What if I lose him? Then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But right now you focus on being present, on showing Ethan every single day that he matters to you. Document it like Rebecca said. Take photos. Make memories, because no matter what happens in that courtroom, Ethan will remember this time. He'll remember that you fought for him. The next 2 weeks were different. Alexander took time off work. He attended Ethan's school events. They went to the park. He even sat through Maya's lessons, sometimes joining in when she taught Ethan simple duets. The apartment felt less like a museum and more like a home, but hanging over all of it was the knowledge that in just a few days, a judge would decide their future, and none of them knew which way it would go. The courthouse felt cold and impersonal, all marble floors and echoing hallways that made Maya's footsteps sound too loud. She sat on a bench outside the courtroom, wearing the most professional outfit she owned, watching Alexander pace back and forth. He'd worn his best suit, but his tie was slightly crooked and he kept running his hands through his hair. Ethan wasn't there. Rebecca had arranged for him to stay with Mrs. Lynn, saying it was better if he wasn't present for the hearing. But a child psychologist had already interviewed him privately, and that report would be presented to the judge. They're ready for us, Rebecca said, emerging from the courtroom. She looked calm and collected, but Maya could see the tension in her shoulders. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than Maya expected. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and silver hair, sat behind the bench. On one side of the room sat Vincent Torres with his legal team. He was handsome in an obvious way, with styled hair and an expensive suit. His wife sat beside him looking nervous. Maya took her seat in the gallery while Alexander sat at the table with Rebecca. Vincent's eyes flickered over to Alexander, but there was no acknowledgement between them. Just cold silence. The hearing began with Vincent's lawyer presenting their case. He talked about biology, about a father's right to know his son, about the stable home Vincent could provide. He mentioned Vincent's successful business, his happy marriage, his 2 stepchildren who could be siblings for Ethan. "My client only recently discovered he had a son," the lawyer said smoothly. "Through no fault of his own, he was kept in the dark about Ethan's existence. Now that he knows, he simply wants the opportunity to be the father he was meant to be." Vincent took the stand, and Maya had to admit he was convincing. He talked about his regret at missing Ethan's first 8 years. He spoke about the family life he could offer, the opportunities, the love. "I understand Mr. Hartwell has been in Ethan's life," Vincent said, looking directly at the judge, "and I'm grateful he stepped up. But now that I know about my son, I want to be there for him. I want to give him everything a father should give." "Have you met Ethan?" the judge asked. Vincent's face fell slightly. "No, Your Honor. Mr. Hartwell has prevented any contact." "That's not true," Alexander said loudly, half rising from his seat. Rebecca put a hand on his arm, pulling him back down. The judge raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Hartwell, you'll have your turn to speak." Vincent's lawyer continued, presenting evidence of Vincent's stable income, his home, his clean record. Then he brought up Alexander's distance from Ethan over the past few years, citing testimony from Ethan's previous nanny, who'd left her position 6 months ago. The previous caregiver reported that Mr. Hartwell was often absent, emotionally unavailable, and that the household felt cold and unwelcoming for a child, the lawyer said. She expressed concerns about Ethan's emotional well-being. Maya felt her chest tighten. That might have been true before, but it wasn't the whole story. Then it was Rebecca's turn. She stood with quiet confidence and began to methodically dismantle Vincent's case. "Your Honor, Mr. Torres presents himself as a loving father ready to step up. But let's be clear about the facts. He had an affair with a married woman. When that woman died 3 years ago, he made no attempt to contact her family or check on her child. He only came forward now, 8 years later, after learning through a private investigator that Ethan stands to inherit a substantial trust fund from his late mother's estate." Vincent's lawyer objected, but Rebecca continued. "Mr. Torres didn't seek custody out of love. He sought it out of financial interest and perhaps guilt. Meanwhile, Alexander Hartwell has been Ethan's father since the day he was born. He's the only father Ethan has ever known." Rebecca called her first witness, Mrs. Lynn, who testified about the household, about Alexander's dedication to Ethan's care, about how much time and energy he'd invested in raising the boy. Then Rebecca called Maya. Maya's hands shook as she took the stand and swore to tell the truth. She could feel everyone's eyes on her, especially Alexander's. "Ms. Chen, you're Ethan's piano teacher, is that correct?" Rebecca asked. "Yes, I've been teaching him for about 2 months. Can you describe what you've observed during that time?" Maya took a breath, gathering her thoughts. "When I first started teaching Ethan, he was a scared, quiet child who was trying desperately to be perfect. He was terrified of making mistakes. He barely smiled. And yes, his father was distant. I won't lie about that." She saw Vincent's lawyer lean forward, sensing an advantage, but, Maya continued, her voice growing stronger, "I also saw why. Mr. Hartwell was dealing with grief and betrayal and fear. He was trying to protect himself and Ethan in the only way he knew how. And when I challenged him on it, when I told him Ethan needed more, he listened. He changed. How did he change?" Rebecca asked. "He started coming home earlier. He attended lessons. He asked questions about Ethan's progress. He learned how to be present." Maya looked directly at the judge. 2 weeks ago, I watched Mr. Hartwell tell his son the truth about this situation in the most gentle, honest way possible. And I watched him hold that boy while he cried and promise him that he would never stop fighting for him. That's not a man who's emotionally unavailable. That's a father who loves his son. And Ethan, how does he feel about Mr. Hartwell? He loves him. He calls him father. When Ethan is scared, he looks for Mr. Hartwell. When he's proud of something, he wants to show him. That bond isn't biology. It's 8 years of showing up every single day." Vincent's lawyer cross-examined her, trying to poke holes in her testimony, suggesting she was biased, that 2 months wasn't enough time to make such judgments. But Maya stood firm. When she stepped down, Alexander caught her eye and mouthed, "Thank you." The final witness was Dr. Patricia Morrison, the child psychologist who'd evaluated Ethan. She was the woman Maya had heard arguing with Alexander that day, she realized. Dr. Morrison's testimony was damning for Vincent's case. I spent 3 hours with Ethan, she said. He's a bright, sensitive child who's very aware of his situation. When I asked him about Mr. Hartwell, his face lit up. He told me about learning to play piano, about going to the park, about his father teaching him to ride a bike just last week. When I asked him about Vincent Torres, he looked confused and scared. He said he didn't want to live with a stranger. Did you ask him directly who he wanted to live with? The judge asked. I did, Your Honor. He said, and I quote, I want to stay with my dad. He's the only dad I've ever had. I don't care about biology. I just want my dad. The courtroom was silent. Maya saw Vincent's wife put her hand on his arm, whispering something. He looked shaken. The judge reviewed the documents in front of her, taking her time. The silence stretched out painfully. Alexander's leg bounced under the table, the only sign of his nervousness. Finally, the judge spoke. I've reviewed all the evidence presented today, including the psychological evaluation and the testimony from witnesses. This is not an easy case. Mr. Torres, I understand your desire to know your biological son. However, the law is clear that the best interest of the child must be paramount. Maya held her breath. Ethan Hartwell is 8 years old. He has lived his entire life with Alexander Hartwell as his father. Mr. Hartwell has provided for him, cared for him, and by all accounts, loves him deeply. While there was a period of emotional distance, the evidence shows that Mr. Hartwell has recognized this and taken active steps to strengthen his relationship with his son. The judge looked at Vincent. Mr. Torres, you may be Ethan's biological father, but you are a stranger to him. Removing him from the only home and family he's ever known would be traumatic and not in his best interest. Therefore, I'm granting full custody to Alexander Hartwell. The adoption proceedings may continue as planned. Mr. Torres, you may petition for supervised visitation rights if you wish to pursue a relationship with Ethan, but that will be at the child's discretion as he gets older. The gavel came down, and Maya felt tears streaming down her face. Rebecca hugged Alexander, who looked like he might collapse from relief. Across the room, Vincent stood up and walked out without a word, his wife hurrying after him. Alexander turned around, his eyes finding Maya in the gallery. The gratitude and emotion on his face said everything words couldn't. 6 months later, Maya arrived for her regular Tuesday lesson to find something different. The apartment didn't feel cold anymore. There were photos on the walls now, pictures of Alexander and Ethan at the park, at the zoo, at Ethan's school concert. There was a drawing stuck to the refrigerator with magnets, messy and imperfect and loved. Ethan ran to greet her at the door, no longer walking with that careful, scared precision. Maya, guess what? Dad said we can get a dog. A real dog. Dad, not father anymore. Just Dad. Alexander appeared from the kitchen, an apron tied around his waist, looking more relaxed than Maya had ever seen him. Don't get too excited. We're still researching breeds and training methods, but you said yes. Ethan laughed, and the sound filled the whole apartment. I did say yes, Alexander admitted, smiling, a real, genuine smile that reached his eyes. After the lesson, while Ethan was in his room doing homework, Alexander walked Maya to the elevator. The adoption was finalized last week, he said quietly. It's official now. He's legally mine. He was always yours, Maya said. The paperwork just caught up with reality. I never thanked you properly. For pushing me, for fighting for him when I was too scared to fight for myself. You would have figured it out eventually. Maybe. Or maybe I would have lost the most important thing in my life. He paused. You know, Ethan asked if you could come to his piano recital next month. Not as his teacher, as family. Maya felt her throat tighten with emotion. I'd be honored. As the elevator doors closed, Maya thought about how strange life was. She'd taken a job teaching piano to a lonely kid in a cold apartment, thinking it was just about money. Instead, she'd witnessed a family break apart and come back together stronger. She'd seen a man learn to love through his fear, and a boy learn that he was worthy of that love. Biology didn't make a family. Love did, showing up did, fighting for each other did, and sometimes it took a piano teacher with a big heart and no sense of professional boundaries to help everyone see that truth. Maya smiled as the elevator descended, already thinking about what song she'd teach Ethan next week. Something joyful, she decided. Something that sounded like a new beginning.